Once upon a time, the country of France had a king named Louis XIV. He spent a lot of his time and money building up a colossal castle called Versailles. He decided that he needed to borrow money from the bankers in France in order to build his magnificent castle. Soon after finishing up, France went to war. In order to go to war, he needed to borrow more money from the bankers in order to buy weapons and supplies. After giving up the throne to a rising new king named Louis XV, he was left with a lot of debt. At this time, France was struggling to survive, so Louis XV needed to borrow more money from the bankers in order to keep France going. He did not care if France's current financial problems led to problems in the future, only that these were the problems of the next king, not his. Soon, a third king called Louis XVI took the crown. France was again struggling with financial and starvation problems. The crops had failed, and there was a shortage of bread. The bankers refused to lend the new king any more money because the previous kings had not paid them back yet. At this time, France's people were split into three groups. The first estate, which was made up of the Catholic Church, the second estate, which was made up of the upper class, and these people did not pay taxes. Then there was the third estate. They were divided into three groups: the bourgeoisie, or middle class, who were rich and educated. Then there were the petite bourgeoisie, who were the laborers and artisans. Finally, there were the peasants, who worked the land and lived in terrible conditions. They had to pay extra dues and taxes. Louis decided that the only way for France to survive was to call a meeting of the Estates General, and wanted to ask the second estate to pay taxes.
Louis, Monsieur Louis, we have a problem. What's the problem? It appears as though the royal bank account is empty. Oh my God, we need to call a meeting of the Estates General. We need to get our money back. Sir, I don't think that is necessary. If you call a meeting of the Estates General, some people might be upset. You could even lose the throne. Oh, I don't care. If I can't have money, nobody can.
Louis XVI called a meeting of the people of France in order to attempt to tax the nobility. The meeting was called the Meeting of the Estates General. The meeting was composed of three groups, with one representing each estate and each estate getting one vote. Only the bourgeoisie could represent the third class. The other two groups were the clergy and the nobility. Only the educated could come to the meeting. All people who attended were wealthy because the poor had to stay home and support their families. Louis XVI's original plan was to make a taxing on the nobility and eventually the clergy too. So all the people of France would be paying taxes. He needed money to solve the financial crisis and the food deficiency. This did not work because many of the clergy were family of the nobility and voted against taxes. It was a 2-to-1 vote. This greatly upset the bourgeoisie because they did not think it was fair that it was based on vote by order. The bourgeoisie wanted two changes to the structure of the meeting of the Estates General. Firstly, they wanted a vote by head because the third estate was more than half of the population and deserved more votes. The second thing was that they wanted the three groups to meet together and debate the issues instead of each group meeting and discussing alone and then voting together. The king decided to try to get rid of this third estate, so he locked them out of their meeting room. As a result of the king's actions, the bourgeoisie went to the nearest place they can find, which was an indoor tennis court. The actions of the bourgeoisie was the first step towards democracy in Europe. This gave the bourgeoisie a sense of power. The people of Europe finally saw that they had a say.
We are the bourgeoisie, and we deserve more than one vote, and we need more change than simply taxing the nobility.
The tennis court oath altered the history of France. Many people from the third estate and a few members from the first and second estates went to an indoor tennis court complex near the Palace of Versailles during the meeting of the Estates General because they were outraged by the king's actions. Once at the tennis court, 576 out of the 577 members from the third estate and a few members from the first estate made a pledge not to disband from the tennis court until a constitution was written for France. On June 17, 1789, this group of people declared themselves the National Assembly, which became the primary French legislative branch. They were the government. In 1791, the first constitution for France was made. This constitution made a limited monarchy, which means the power of the king was limited but not abolished. The Constitution was based off the ideas of the French philosopher Montesquieu.
They gave the king the right to reject any laws that the National Assembly made. This constitution did not work out well because Louis XVI rejected every law the National Assembly proposed him.
This was when the National Assembly realized that this constitution was not going to work and began to revise and make a new one. The kings of Austria and Prussia were outraged by the actions of the National Assembly and demanded the return of all Louis's power.
The National Assembly refused, so they declared war on France.
This was the biggest change in monarchy. Now there was a limited monarch, and all the people were equal. The people now had a say in the running of the country. This was the biggest step towards democracy, and this was a major change in France's traditions.
Number 1. Do you swear not to disband until a constitution for France is made? Yes, I do. Number 2. Do you swear not to disband until a constitution for France is made? Yes, I do. Number 577. Do you swear not to disband until a constitution for France is made? Yes, I do. Oh, thank God.
The storming of the Bastille occurred on July 14, 1789. The Bastille was a fortress and prison in Paris that represented authority of the king. The petite bourgeoisie became afraid because Austria and Prussia were invaded. They also were scared because of the corruption in the States General. As a result of their fear, they invaded the fortress of Bastille because they wanted to steal the weapons and gunpowder in order to protect themselves. This was the start of the Second Revolution and a step towards the Great Fear. The amount of chaos was immense. For example, when they stormed the Bastille, the leaders of the mob promised the guards they would not be hurt if they stood down. And by the time the whole mob went through into the fortress, all the guards' heads were on sticks. Once the National Assembly heard about this, they decided they need something to give the people assurance, so they adapted the Declaration of Rights of Man that England made and turned it into the Declaration of Rights of Man and Citizen. This document declared the rights that every man and citizen possessed, which were liberty, equality, and fraternity. It also removed the special privileges that the first and second class held. This was a great step towards democracy because it brought power to the people. The people weren't scared anymore and now believed they could change what they wanted. The government also lost their power and authority. This made Louis XVI very scared. He was scared enough to try to escape from France.
We were successful, men. We have the weapons. The Bastille has fallen. We did it. That's great, but what do we do now that we have the weapons?
Many people, especially the women, were frustrated because of the lack of bread, and the fact that any bread that was available was extremely expensive. Many of the people blamed Marie Antoinette because she didn't seem to care. The peasants had decided to revolt during the storming of Bastille, and Louis XVI was scared for his life. They believed that the storming would lead to the government to promise them bread. After the storming of Bastille, the peasants were no longer scared of the government. The frightened Louis and his family attempted to escape from France. Before Louis and his family could even leave their palace at Versailles, they were captured and marched to Louis's apartment in France. Louis's cowardly actions was a sign of weakness in the government.
The people were very much involved with the government's decisions, and there were more people involved with the government than ever before. This was the closest that France would become during the